Hello?
Hello, weirdos here.
What?
You said that I'm weird.
I said you guys are just watching my live on another live was weird.
I didn't. I was here in the chat.
I literally got have a screenshot of it. I don't know. I don't know. I, I don't know why we're lying, guys. I really don't know why we're lying. Like I have
How am I,
screenshots that people
how
sent
am
me.
I lying, bro? As soon as I knew you were live, I came over here.
I don't know why we're lying. This is literally them watching my live. Okay, guess we're just lying though. So, weird.
No, it's not actually. I'm not lying at all. In fact, as soon as you were live and I knew about it, Speaking Muslim said, "Oh, why don't you go to Nick's live?" And I showed up.
And you guys just sat there watching it? Strange you put it on the
How,
screen.
how am I? How am I sitting there watching it if I'm here?
Oh my gosh, I said you were because I have
And I
screenshots
just,
of
I
it.
literally just explained to you the sequence of events. A screenshot
Oh my
means
gosh.
that it was there for how long?
It was at least a minute.
Okay, so I'm here on your live. You said the Trinity is logical.
Yep.
Okay, so but by what relation do you count gods in the Trinity?
By what relation do I count God?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just count by division.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means we count whether things are divisible.
You count things that are divisible
Yeah, whether they're divisible.
or not.
Yeah.
So if they can possibly be divided, then they count as more than one?
If they can be divided, yeah, you can potentially count them as more than one, yeah.
No, but is mere potential for them to be divided, is that sufficient for them to be counted as more than one?
Yeah, I wouldn't see any issue with that.
Okay, and is that for anything or that's only for God?
Yeah, that's going to be in relation to God because other things are going to have things like be universals and particulars in our view. I'm not a nominalist, so
Yeah, but I'm just saying, in terms of God Himself, is that true all across the board?
for God, yeah.
Okay, but it's not for created things.
Right.
And why is that?
Because created things are universals and particulars?
And that's not the case for the Trinity.
No.
Okay, so in the Trinity itself, you said that's going to be true. By what relation do you count persons in the Trinity?
Are you just asking in which way? You're just asking by division again?
By what relation do you count persons?
Yeah, if you're just asking how
The
I
same
count
way.
them, again, it's still by division.
It's by division. So how many persons are there in the Trinity?
Three persons.
Well, if it's by division, then there would be only one person.
How would there only be one person?
Because you said counting by division means that if they can possibly be divided or separated, then you count them as one in the category that's we're talking about. In the category
We're
of
counting them
God.
as we're counting them as one God, but not that they're
Yeah.
one person.
In the category of God, you're counting them as one God because they cannot be divided or separated, correct?
Yeah, we're counting them as one God because there's no division, no separation within that. A distinction is going to be different. Distinction doesn't entail separation.
I never said it did I?
Great. So I'm pointing out the fact that persons are distinct, but they're not separated or divided still.
Right. So the persons, which each one of them are God, they count as one God because they cannot be possibly separated by time or space, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, in like manner, because you said that's true for God across the board, in like manner, that would mean that the persons, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, because they cannot be separated by time or space and are not divisible by time or space, they should count as one person, not three persons.
Well, they would count as one God, one ontology, but they're going to be distinct in their personhood specifically via the relation.
Okay, so by what relation are you counting persons? You can't be counting them
We're
by
counting
division
by
or
we're
separate.
talking about by the relation of begetting, inspiration.
So you're not counting them by division or
Yes,
separability.
you can still count them by division and still entail distinctions. You just can't entail division or separation.
And if they're not divided or separated, then that, or cannot possibly be divided or separated, that means they would count as one instead of three.
It would count as one if there's also no distinctions there. But there can be a distinction that's not a separation.
Right. And so in the same way in which in the category of God, there is a distinction but no separation, they would count as three gods.
Well, if there's multiple gods, yeah, if there's a distinction in godhood, then yeah, but there's no distinction in godhood.
No, because before you just said that they're not separated by time or space. That's what it means to count by division.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying if that is sufficient for counting them as one thing instead of multiple or more than one, then in like manner, if you applied it consistently across the board, they would have to count as one person instead of three.
Yeah, that would be if and only if there's not a distinction in personhood itself. Again, if there was a distinction in godhood, it would make there multiple gods, but the distinction in personhood makes it okay to say there's multiple persons, even with counting by division.
No, because counting by division means, as you said earlier, that they can only be counted as more than one in the category under examination if they are possibly divided or separated. But the persons are not possibly divided or separated.
Yeah, you can only count them as more than one in that ontology that you're speaking about if it's going to be a separation or division. But you can still count the distinction itself as personhood.
Say the last part again.
Count the still count the distinction in personhood as long as it's just a distinction and it's not a separation or a division.
Yeah, but if it's not a separation or division, then they can't count as more than one.
They can count as more than one, even if there's a distinction. At least there just has to be a distinction in the personhood. If there's a distinction in something underlying, like a subcategory, then no. But if there's a distinction in the primary category, then there can be.
What do you mean by that distinction between primary and secondary category?
Yeah, if there's a subcategory, right? And let's say for essence, for example, if there's a subcategory of distinction, like between the attributes, for example, well, then that's not going to make for multiple gods. There would have to be a distinction in godhood or in ontology. So in the primary category of personhood, as long as there's a distinction in the primary category itself, like relation, then it's going to be a distinction. If there's a category in the if there's a distinction in the subcategory, like maybe something like the attributes of the personhood, then it's not going to account for distinction there.
Okay, I don't know if you're really understanding the point that I'm trying to raise or the objection I'm raising. I'm saying to you that if not being divided by time or space is sufficient, it's not just necessary, but is sufficient for counting things as one rather than multiple, then by that same line of counting and by that same method of counting, if the persons cannot possibly be separated by time or space, then they would count as one person. Because
if and only if there's not a distinction in the primary category.
No, but then that means you're counting them by identity.
No, it just means that we're counting them in the primary category distinction itself.
Yeah, and distinction or counting them by distinction is counting by identity. That's what it means.
You have to prove that counting by distinction can only be counted by identity.
Oh my God, bro. What do you think it means to count by identity?
Yeah, counting by identity, just counting multiple things. For example, if you have, let's see, if you have like a bagel on the table, right? Like a good example that David Leisman gives, if you have a bagel on the table and you cut the bagel in half, according to identity, that would be 2 bagels now.
Oh man. So when I'm talking about identity, I'm talking about Leibniz's law. That's what I'm talking about in this context. I'm talking about counting by discernibility. If you count things as more than one, so long as they're not identical to each other, i.e., they're discernible from one another.
So what kind of identity there?
Meaning that not everything that's true of one is true of the other, or they don't share all of the same properties.
So absolute identity, right?
Yeah.
So why can you only count that then by identity, and then if there's a distinction, you can't count that by division? What's the symmetry breaker?
No, I don't.
That's my question. What's the symmetry breaker?
I don't think you're understanding the point, because you just said before that you don't see a difference, or you're saying that there is a difference between counting by discernibility or identity. No, they're the same thing in this case.
Yeah, I'm just asking you what's a symmetry breaker because you said you can't then count by
Symmetry breaker for
division.
what?
You said that you would have to count by identity. If there's a distinction, you can't count by division then. So I said I want you
Saying, no, no,
to
no, no.
show me the
I didn't
symmetry
say
breaker.
that.
So you
No, I
admit
didn't
we
say that.
can't count by division if there's a distinction.
No, that's not what I said. I
So can we
said
count by division if there's a distinction?
if you count by division, then that would entail that there's only one person in the Trinity.
How does that entail that if there's a primary distinction?
Okay. So let's go back to the beginning when you defined what counting by division is. You want to define it again?
I want you to tell me why, if there's a primary distinction, that it would not entail there's multiple persons, even with counting by division.
Because counting by division means that if they are not possibly separated by time or space, then that is sufficient in itself to count them as one rather than more than one.
Yeah, that is able to count them as one in one way. So we do count them as one in one way in their ontology, but it is not does not mean you cannot count them as more than one in another way. It does, for example, if you count a bagel by division, again, as David Leisman writes in his paper, that does not mean then that you cannot attribute different distinctions and count more than one in any way in the bagel. I can say there's one bagel, right? And this is not an analogy for the Trinity, just so y'all know. This is talking about counting by division. But then you have multiple raisins. You can still count multiple raisins in the bagel, for instance. So this is just showing that even counting by division, you can still count distinctions within things.
Yeah, but when you count by distinction within things, then you're counting by a different relation. You're counting by discernibility in that case.
Yeah, I still think though that that fits just fine in line with counting by division, that you can still count distinctions within division. If you're saying we
Yeah,
can't
but you're
then
just
count
counting two
distinctions by
different ways.
division, if you're saying we can't then count by distinction within division, then you're going to have to provide me the symmetry breaker as to why we can't.
No, I don't think you're understanding the point. I didn't say that there's a contradiction in the two methods of counting. I said that they're just two different ways of counting. That's the point.
Yeah,
When
yeah,
you count,
yeah. So,
when
so
you're
my point is,
counting by
can we count these
discernibility,
things by division?
when you're counting by discernibility or identity, that's one thing. When you count by division, that's another thing. They're not the same counting method.
The point is though is I'm saying you can still count multiple indivisible things by division and still get to multiple persons. That's the point. There's no issue with
Okay,
that.
repeat that one more time. Go ahead.
You can still count multiple indivisible things by division, get distinctions, and count multiple persons, as long as it's not divisible within reality or separated within reality.
Okay, so then it's not true that counting by division means that if two things are indivisible and inseparable from one another, then they necessarily are going to count as one in every sense.
Not in every sense. No, it doesn't mean they're going to count as one in every sense. No, where'd you get that from?
Because if they're indivisible and inseparable from one another in every sense, then that would mean that they would count as one in every sense.
I know. I don't think that them being indivisible doesn't mean there's distinction. No distinctions entailed. There can be distinctions that aren't divisible distinctions.
Oh man, I know that there can be a distinction without separation or division. I believe that too. That's not the point. That means that when you're counting them in that case as more than one thing, even though they cannot possibly be separated or divided, but they are distinct, meaning that they're not identical, then in that case, when you count them as more than one, you are counting by identity, not by division.
Yeah, again, my whole point is though is that when we're talking about counting by division itself, we can still conclude that there are distinctions that we can count within that division itself, and the two things itself won't be divisible, like attributes, for instance, or like let's say, for instance, the persons.
Attributes are divine persons.
What?
The attributes or divine persons.
Yeah, so we can say that the persons and their attributes, the relations to one another, is what distinguishes them. That's going to be a primary distinction that we can still count within counting by division.
But when you count them as more than one person and you count them as more than one attribute, by what relation are you counting them as more than one?
Yet we're still counting them within counting by division.
How? How are you counting
Because
them?
because
How are
of
you
the
counting them
primary
by
distinction.
division? Because of the primary distinction. What does that
Yes.
mean?
Bro, I already explained to you what primary distinction is, dude. Primary distinction is going to be within the subject itself, within the subject at hand.
Yeah,
So
within a
not going to be in
subject.
a subcategory of that. So not going to be like within an attribute, but going to be within the actual thing itself.
Where is the attribute if it's not in the thing itself?
No, I'm saying the attribute, there's primary and secondary ones. So for example, if we're talking about the essence or we're talking about some sort of essential property, that's going to be primary. If we're talking about something external to the thing, that's going to be secondary.
Yeah, but in the case of the persons, we're not talking about something external. We're talking about something within them.
Which is why it's primary.
Exactly.
So the primary distinction is what distinguishes them as multiple persons.
Right, and that distinction, because you're counting them as as distinction, you are counting them by identity, by the fact that they are distinct from one another.
I
You're
don't
not
think counting distinct things is necessarily counting by identity. You have to justify that.
Yes. Okay. So let me read for you from Bo Branson, who explicitly explains this. Okay. 1 second here. All right. So Branson says, and this is a quote, today we count F's by one, logical subjects that are two, discernible, keyword, discernible from, or at least not identical to. That's what it means. Discernible and not identical to is the same in this context with one another and are both F. That is, if X and Y differ in any way and are both F-ish, we count them as two Fs. So in this context, when we say counting by identity or counting by discernibility, they're synonymous with each other. It means the same thing. Branson
where did he say, though, that is the only way to count distinctions? You said that that's the only way to count distinctions. I want to know where you got that from.
What do you mean that's the only way to count distinctions?
If you count multiple distinct things, the only way to do that is by identity. I'm saying, where are you getting that from?
No, I'm saying it's assumed by the fact that they're not identical. That's the relation you're counting to that.
So is that the only way to count distinct things by identity?
No, you can count distinct things by other relations so long as you provide a criteria for that. But your criteria for counting by division is not fulfilled in the case of persons or attributes, because they can only be counted as multiple persons or multiple attributes if and only if they are possibly separated or divided from one another, which they're not. Therefore, that's not fulfilled, so you cannot count them as more than one person or attribute in the case of counting by division.
No, we wouldn't be able to count them as multiple ontologies, because when we say that they're not separated or not divisible, then we're talking about ontology there. But when we then speak about the fact that they are distinct within relation, is going to be talking about the fact that they're distinct in personhood. So we can entail a distinction in personhood, but what we can't do in counting by division here is talking about a distinction within ontology.
Are the persons distinct in ontology?
No, what? That's my point.
So the persons are not ontologically distinct.
No.
Okay, in what way are they distinct?
Relationally?
Okay, and is the relation ontological?
No, it's not an ontological relation. If you mean it's a difference in ontology. It's a personal relation.
Is it constitutive of the persons?
What do you mean by that?
Are relations things that exist in between entities, or are they something that are possessed by the entities?
Do you mean by in between? Do you mean that separating them ontologically? I don't know what you mean by in between entities.
Okay, do you know what a relation is?
Yes.
What is a relation? What is a relation in your view?
Yes, a relation is going to be some sort of connection between two or more things.
Okay, do the persons possess those relational properties?
Yes.
Are they ontological?
They're not a different ontology. You can say that they are identical to the ontology of the essence.
No,
they're not a different ontology.
Are relational properties ontological? Are they real?
Yeah, they're of the ontology, yeah.
Okay, so then that goes back to the point when you just said
so still one ontology.
They're not ontologically different. They are, because the persons each possess.
I just said they're the same ontology, dude.
Okay. So what personal property does the Father have that the Son doesn't have, and vice versa?
The fact that he begets the Son.
Okay. And what does the Son possess that the Father doesn't?
The fact of being begotten.
Okay. And are those real properties that each one possesses that the other doesn't?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So is a property ontological?
It can subsist in ontology. It itself is not ontological.
A property is not ontological.
No, properties aren't just necessarily ontological. Wait,
What
do you
are
think?
they?
Wait, you think properties are all ontological?
What are they?
So do you think that Allah has 99 different ontologies?
I think that he has nine, well, we don't say 99, those are referring to the names, but I believe that Allah's attributes are real, they're ontological, yes.
So does God have a bunch of different ontologies?
God has multiple real, distinct attributes.
Are they
Now,
different
back to my
ontologies?
point, they're not the same.
So
Yeah.
God has more than one ontology?
God has multiple distinct real attributes. Don't you believe that?
Wait, I'm asking you, I want to be clear. Do you think God has multiple ontologies?
When you say ontologies, what do you mean by that?
The same, the same way you've been. So now suddenly you don't know what
just
ontologies
explained it to
means?
you. No, because I
The
explained it to you.
same way you've been using it this whole time. Suddenly you don't know what it means?
No, I explained it to you 3 times, but now you're asking me the same question. I believe ontological means it has a reality.
Okay,
It has an actual reality. It's not something conceptual that's merely in the mind.
great. Does God
Okay,
have
so yes,
multiple ontologies?
God has multiple real attributes that are not distinct merely in mind alone. They are ontologically distinct.
So I
They
just want to be
are
clear.
really distinct from each
So I
other.
just want to be clear. God has, I just want to make sure I'm not strawman you. God has multiple ontologies, right? According to you.
In that case, all ontology means that God has multiple real distinct attributes. Yes, he does.
And what are they?
And
What's
you
the type
believe
of?
the
What's the
same thing,
distinction
don't
between
you?
them? Wait, what's the distinction between them?
They're not identical.
What type of distinction, though?
They're discernible from one another. They
Great,
are
great.
really
That doesn't tell me the
distinct.
type of distinction.
Yes, it does. It tells you they're really distinct, meaning they're not identical, but they're indivisible and inseparable from each other.
Great, but what kind of distinction, though? There's multiple kinds. Are you familiar with the different kinds of
I
distinction?
just told, are you listening? I just told you it's a real distinction.
How are you using real? Are you using the scholastic term of real, or are you using more of an Eastern real?
My God. Now we're moving on to discussing Allah's attributes, which by the way, I have no problem with doing whatsoever.
Great,
But
so-
this is moving away. Hold on a second. This is moving away from the discussion at hand.
It's called a
which is
consistency
you
argument.
claim- no, yeah, and I am consistent. I count.
Okay,
I count the attributes.
So I want to know.
The attributes. Hold on a second. I count the attributes. I count the attributes. I count everything within God. I count by identity. You don't do that. You're
Great.
counting gods by division or separability, and then when it comes to persons or attributes, you're counting them by identity or discernibility.
Great.
That's
I just want to know though. You haven't answered. I just want to know when you say
I have
real.
answered
Are
you
you? No,
several
you have. I want to
times.
know. Are you using the scholastic term or are you using the Eastern term of real?
Am I using the scholastic term of real?
Yes. Are you using scholastic real distinction or Eastern real distinction?
What's the relevant difference?
You don't know the difference between a scholastic distinction and a Eastern? Do you know what a
No.
scholastic real distinction is?
Dude, I have it right in front of me. I can literally read it for you.
Do you
Right
know what a
out-
scholastic real distinction is?
Right?
Dude?
Yes, I do. And I can literally read it from you, literally right out of the dictionary of scholastic philosophy, which I have right in front of me.
Great.
But
So are you using a
totally-
scholastic real distinction, or it should be easy
You
then?
are totally moving away.
I'm glad you looked up
from
the dictionary.
subject.
I'm glad you looked up the dictionary. I'm asking you a question, okay? Are you
Nick,
using the scholastic or the
It's
Eastern?
obvious that you're moving away from the discussion.
I
of the
literally
Trinity.
let you
Because-
talk about it for 20 minutes, and I ask you one question, and suddenly
Yeah.
you don't like it.
No.
Let's
It's
talk
because
about it.
You've been.
It's
getting
just an
bait for
open
the past
conversation,
half hour,
dude. It's an
You
open
literally
conversation,
just
dude.
said- Yeah, exactly.
So I
It's
want you
open
to answer the
conversation,
question.
Which I showed up here, by the way, because you guys were cowering on and on all day, going back and forth.
Cowering? I emailed you 10 minutes after you emailed me, and you haven't emailed me back yet. What are you talking about, dude?
Dude, you guys were literally on a live stream today.
And I told you, and I told Speaking to tell you to come through, and you didn't.
Yeah, because I was busy.
Okay, so now who's cowering? So who's cowering? If I'm in the live, if I'm in a live in front of 500 people saying, get Jake, get Jake, get Jake, and he don't come, how am I the one cowering?
You're not getting the point. You guys were going on and on talking about it. That's the point. I came
because you wouldn't come, or you wouldn't email me back. So I had to talk to your minions because you wouldn't email me back.
No, because we were going through a third party who was supposed to be hosting the discussion, which I have no control over.
You could have just emailed me back, dude.
Anyway, back to the point.
Anyways, I want you to answer the question.
You haven't answered the question.
I've been answering your questions for 20 minutes now, dude. I just wanted you to answer if it was Scholastic or Eastern.
You've literally been running in circles for the past 30 minutes.
I've been answering all your questions, dude.
You don't understand the point.
This is an open discussion. I don't know when it comes to Islam, y'all just don't want to talk about it for some reason. So what kind of distinction is it?
Hold on a second. The question is, Christianity and the Trinity are logical.
Oh my God.
Prove me wrong.
Yes, and it's an open discussion, and we talked about it for 20 minutes.
If you want to have a discussion on Islam, then you can come on my panel and talk to me about it.
We're talking about both right now. Let's critique each other's views. We're talking about both.
You haven't even gotten past the fundamental step.
We literally already talked about it. So
you just went through telling me that properties are not ontological.
Oh my God. So we're talking about that. So that's what great. So we're talking about that.
And in the case of the Trinity, the personal properties or the hypostatic properties that they possess, they are ontological.
Okay, great. We're talking about that. So I asked you, then when you said that they're really distinct, are you using the Scholastic or the Eastern term?
If the personal properties or the hypostatic properties are ontological, therefore that is what is accounting for them being distinct or counting as more than one person.
Great.
You're not counting them by division.
Great. And you say that they're ontologically really distinct. Are you? I want to understand what you're saying. You said they're really distinct. I want you to understand what you're saying. Are you saying they're Scholastic? Are you using the Scholastic term or the Eastern term?
What are really distinct?
The attributes.
In your understanding?
No, in yours. Are you using the Scholastic term of real, or are you using the Eastern term?
I'm using the term of real in the sense that they are not identical but cannot be separated.
Great. So great. That all that tells me is that they're distinct in some way. I'm asking, are you using the Scholastic? Because you already said you know it, so it should be easy. Are you talking about the Scholastic or the Eastern side of real?
No, I didn't say that. I said to you.
It's a question. I didn't say you said anything. I asked you a question.
I said to you by real distinction, and I just explained it very clearly to you. By real distinction, I mean that they are not identical. They are discernible from one another. However, they are not separated.
Great. All that means is there's a distinction. All that means is a distinction. But there's like 10 different types of distinctions that could be, which is why I'm asking, are you using the Scholastic term of a real distinction or an Eastern?
Which one is relevant? How is that relevant to responding to the LPT?
Bro, it's relevant because it's a consistency argument. So I'm asking you again.
You're not explaining how it's how am I being inconsistent? How am I being inconsistent with counting the persons and the attributes and gods in the Trinity by distinction as more than one? Hold on a second. And in the case of my understanding of God as counting the attributes as more than one. How is that inconsistent?
I'm showing you, if you would tell me so I don't straw man you, what type of real distinction you're using. Are you using Scholastic or Eastern?
Neither.
So which kind?
I already explained to you what I'm using. I said
neither.
That the attributes are distinct from one another. They're not identical. They're discernible from one another, but cannot be separated by time or space.
So then why is it not a formal distinction?
Formal distinction, that's a scholastic term.
Yeah, why is it not a formal distinction?
I didn't say that it was or it wasn't. I defined for you what it is.
So is it
I
real?
defined for you what it is because, unlike you, I'm not concerned with the wording. I'm
Dude,
concerned with the
bro,
content.
I don't even feel
I'm
like you know these.
concerned with the.
Do you know
I'm
what's
concerned with the.
Bro,
I'm concerned with the content of what you're saying, and I'm also concerned with the consistency of the content of what I'm saying.
Dude, I'm be honest. I don't think you know what you're talking about. What's the difference between a real and a formal distinction?
Oh my God.
Come on, you don't need a nervous laugh. What's the difference?
You think that I don't know the difference
Answer the
between
question.
a real and formal distinction?
Answer the
I know
question.
what the difference is.
Then answer the question.
I believe that.
Then answer the question instead of trying to hurry up and look it up.
I'm not. I'm answering you if you would shut up for a second.
Great, answer the question. Difference between real and formal.
That I believe that a formal distinction is a type of real distinction.
So what's the difference?
The difference, it depends on whose definition you're looking at.
What is the difference between a real and formal?
The Scotus and the Thomists don't agree about this. That's the whole point.
Okay, what's the difference between the Scotus formal distinction? So we'll just pick one. I'll pick a random. What's the difference between a Scotus formal distinction and a real distinction?
The Scotus formal distinction is basically equivalent to what I just said, that two things are not identical, they're discernible from one another, even if they can't be separated by time or space.
So there's no distinction between a real and formal distinction in the Scotus view?
I didn't say that. You asked me what the formal distinction is, and I just defined it for you.
What is the difference between? It's very. I don't know why you can't answer. What's the difference between a real?
How stupid are you?
You haven't. What's the distinction between? What's the difference between a real distinction?
You keep going to asking me about
because you can't answer. This is crazy.
I did.
What's the difference between a real distinction and a formal distinction?
I just told you what it is.
What is it then?
I just told you that a formal distinction is what I just described, that a distinction, meaning it's discernible or not identical, but cannot be separated.
That's the same thing you defined a real distinction as. Is it not?
Oh boy.
Is that not the same thing you just described a real distinction as?
Hey, did you not hear me? Where I said that I believe my personal position is that a formal distinction is a type of real distinction? Did you clock that?
You said a type. That means there's a difference, no?
Yeah, there are differences.
So tell me the difference.
There's a real distinction. How? I don't understand.
This is crazy. Tell me the difference.
I don't understand how dumb you actually are.
Bro, just tell me the difference.
You really are a complete moron.
All right, bro.
Another type of real distinction
Dude, thanks for coming on, bro. Is that your best? Is that your best hitter, Islam? Bro, is that y'all's best hitter? Oh my God. That's who y'all was begging for me to debate? Is that who y'all was begging for me to debate? Is that who y'all were begging for me to debate, saying I was running from? A guy who doesn't know the dang difference between a real and a formal distinction, a guy who said his God has multiple ontologies, that's who y'all begging me to debate. Waste of my time over here saying I'm the A side. I'm the A side. Yo, I don't need to email him back. I'll get my little minions. I'm the A side. You can come to my live. Who are you? You don't know nothing, dude. Studying Islam for 15 years for what? Get out of here, bruh. Studying Islam for 15 years for what, dude? I don't know what the frick you talking about, bruh. How about you humble yourself, dude? Jin need to humble himself. That is embarrassing. Embarrassing. Seriously, embarrassing. It was for the past 5 days, all I've heard is debate this guy, you're scared.